Bismillah ar-Rahim. We will continue our discussion and we will move to casuistry, moral casuistry. I hope that it depends on our discussion. If we will have enough time to, we will discuss 3 casuistry cases. So number 1 is sexual ethics, about sexual ethics. So about the marriage, the sexual relationship. So we have these possibilities or categories. So consensual relationship and non-consensual relationship. In the consensual relationship, so we have different possibilities or different cases. Marriage with the intention of divorce, official marital contract, unofficial marital relationship, non-marital relationship. So with the non-consensual relationship, it can be, we have 2 options or two possibilities, outside marriage and within marriage. These are very controversial, you know, in the world, actually, in human rights, you know, and religions and, you know, cultures between West and East, you know, and it depends on the religion even, and the laws, some laws, you know. So it reflects this case as a complicated case. It reflects the complexity between law, fiqh, and ethics. So the discussion is open now. But just keep in mind that each judgment or ruling or opinion has to be based on justifications. So the discussion is open about these possibilities and whether it's moral, immoral, you know, legal, illegal, religious, non-religious, you know, but with justifications. You can choose just one of these cases. You are not obliged to, you know, to answer all these possibilities, you know. So who would like to start? We will try to apply our previous discussions on these cases. Who would like to start?
I have just one question. What about the marriage with the intention of divorce? What do you mean, the temporary marriage?
This is a classical issue.
Yeah.
It's written in the fiqh, and there are some practices of this, marginal practices in some areas, especially in the Gulf, you know. Those who would like to be committed to keep the procedure, the moral, the fiqh procedure, the formality, but at the same time they are not seeking for serious marriage to establish family, you know. So they are actually, in fact, they are seeking for sexual relationship. Okay, but okay, how to legalize to fiqhicize this form to feel good and to you know, so to feel good and to feel not guilty in the religious perspective. So they follow this procedure. So they keep the form, but there's discussion about the value, you know. Would you like to comment on this? Or any other possibility?
I was thinking about the old tradition of temporary marriage. It's something that I don't know, because in Islamic community in Europe, so the marriage with the intention of divorce is not well considered now. So I had a lot of discussion about this topic with some mosques in Italy and in Switzerland, and it's something that all the Muslims that I meet during this conference used to tell me, that's something old, we don't do it anymore. Is it true or not, according to you here in an Arab country?
No, I'm asking about this.
Okay.
I'm not giving fatwas now.
Okay.
Okay.
I just have a question. Can you explain the difference between an unofficial marital relationship and
Okay,
a
those who
non-marital?
get married and to follow the process, but they don't register this marriage contract in the state, you know, in the procedure. Yes, they have a contract. They can bring, witnesses, and they have a oral contract or even written contract, but it's not official in the state. So the state does not consider this as an official marriage. So you can start with one case and just say your opinion and why. Legal, moral, or immoral, it depends. And what is the justification? These cases are reflecting and are putting here in purpose. They are reflecting the binaries that I gave you in the beginning. Each case can be reflected, can reflect one of the binary. Yes.
I didn't get the difference between unofficial marital relationship and non-marital relationship, because like both of them seems to be the same.
No, the key point here is the state.
Okay.
The الورق.
Yes, but both of them are not involved in state or in the law.
An official
No, but
marital
non-marital
relationship.
the involved parties, they don't recognize this as marriage.
Yes,
They
so
are not married. If you ask them, they are. So it's
So,
not registered.
Non-marital,
They don't consider this
yes,
as marriage.
yes.
Sorry,
Non-marital relationship, it means, temporary relationship
Like boyfriend
or
and girlfriend.
and
It's not
boyfriend or girlfriend.
But I think what she meant was zira, like in Iran, for Shia, it's allowed still. You can marry for 6 months, 1 month,
Yes.
1 day.
This is a case I didn't include here. Yeah, it can be included.
okay, but
Yeah.
would that be زواج المتعة? Would that be an
But this is-
official marital relationship?
It can be marriage with the intention of divorce.
But it's-
Intention. So they decided in advance that they will be divorced after 1 week, 10 months, or 1 year. So it's included in this. It fall under this category.
But it's not. Sorry, but it's not acknowledged from the governmental side.
The question that if it's moral or immoral and why. Yes.
Yes, but before we have to understand the definitions.
Which one? Which
I mean,
one
what-
are you asking about?
Yes, what my colleague was saying is, for example, to figure out زواج المتعة. زواج المتعة, as I know, because I'm from Iraq, and the Shia practice that a lot, is that you go to a sheikh, mullah,
Yes.
whatever,
Yes.
and he is writing actually a paper,
Yes.
oral
Yes.
or writing,
Yeah.
and she agrees, he agrees, and then they go.
Yes.
3 hours later, they come back and are
It's
divorced.
not necessary to go to him as زواج المتعة. It's not. This is one of the practices, but it's not necessary to go to sheikh or mullah. They can agree with each other. They can do their contract together privately.
Without
And
witness.
Yes, they can do this. This is so there are different applications of the same, but the general category here is marriage with the intention of divorce. Yes.
Like the key point here to differentiate between all those kinds of consensual relationships are the role of the state, and this is something new. Like after the nation state came in.
Not all of them. Not all of them. Some of them.
Like
Yes,
some of them.
yes.
And it takes me here to spot the light on the role of the state, and this is something
Yes.
new in the history.
Yes.
After coming
Yes.
with the
You are
nation
right.
state. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And this comes with my
Yeah.
political science background, and I can persuade with that. Before the nation state came in 1684 or 48, there was no rule for the state to interfere in people's marriage.
The church was
Yeah.
playing this role.
Okay, I mean in the Islamic world,
Yes.
at least, the Khalifa or
Yeah.
The leader,
Yes.
the Hakim, like it wasn't his business to interfere in people's personal life, who married, who got married. It wasn't somehow documented, to be registered for the government. So this is a new phenomena, or a modern phenomena, and it is attached to the nation state after it was spread also to the Arab world or for the Islamic world. So what is the state business and interfering in the people's life?
So what's your opinion about the unofficial marriage, marital relationship?
It's more,
Moral.
yeah,
Why?
as it is before the state formulation or the whole world was the same to this as a nation state. It was going on and it was halal.
It should be legal.
Somehow.
So it's
as the
moral,
state-
but is it legal?
As the state started by all kinds of a state, like liberal state, social state, and all kinds of a state started to interfere in people's life. Fiqh can change in this time, and I can tell you in some countries, especially in Egypt, most of the new marriage happened recently. They are not registered for the government because they will pay more taxes.
What if they got a child?
Here's the point.
This is the point. And he didn't acknowledge this. And the man didn't acknowledge this. He said, no, we are not married. So then, how can, the moral and legal, how can they work together here in this case?
I think
No?
the question is if the marriage was in secret or if it was like, if the people know. If the people know, they will acknowledge that it's his child, even if the state doesn't acknowledge
Yes.
his marriage.
Yeah, so it can be this and it can be this. Because we are among different applications. There is no regulation. He is supporting the idea that the state has no role to play here. So if there is no regulations, the door is open for a lot of possibilities and cases, But in some cases, or many at least, there will be legal problems with the child, with the rights. If he was very bad guy with her, and then and if for example he disappeared or he abandoned her, and then religiously she is married, but okay, he has to divorce her, but okay, he refused to do this. What's the point here? Religiously, legally they are not married. She can marry another person, but if religiously she cannot do this. Do you see that there are a lot of applications and consequences? So this is why I asked you to give your judgment based on justification and considering the consequences in each case. Yes.
Sir, with the second and the third point, official marital contract and unofficial, when it comes to the differentiation between Shia and Sunni, Shia goes with the Mutah marriage, and they are having the different mindset for some of them are following Shafi Fiqh school of law. So for them, the way morality and legal ethics go side by side in a parallel way, they supported and found that it is very ethical to go for a contract, which is Mutah marriage, a temporary marriage, and by doing so, they justify it by saying, okay, it is good to not to do haram and to opt a halal way. But when it comes to Sunnis, for official thing, particularly when I am from India, I'm from India, and talking in that context, people are followers of Hanafi fiqh. So we oppose the concept of muta marriage, and same is the case with the temporary marriages, comparing it with the marriage laws that were, I guess, in Morocco, mudahana marriage, where the marriage was not registered, and the society faced lot of consequences after that. Males were, marriage and divorce was going on. I mean, still now is going on a daily basis, where moral and ethics and legal laws and the interference of the state government is coming in between the picture to save the morality. This is how it goes on. The mindset we are following, the schools we are following, and that is shaping our morality, that is shaping our ethics, and the way we follow the legal laws to justify what we are doing in marriage. That's it.
Any other comment?
Sheikh,
Yes.
I have a question first. So my question is that is word mura synonymous to ethic?
Yes. Here. Yes.
Okay. If the word, because what I'm thinking now is that when we are talking about mura is different from a place to another. It might be that. So, and when we are talking about mura, at times, it has to do with someone's consent. So, and in this case, for example, marriage with the intention of divorce. So, we can say, for me, if we differentiate between ethic and mora, I can say it is ethical, but it's not mora. And if we say they are together, ethic is moral. So we can say it is immoral because you are eating something in agreement, and this something you are eating, so someone will be affected by what you are eating in the agreement. So, and if it is like that, it is immoral.
I didn't understand what's the difference between moral and ethical, in your opinion.
Okay, to me, I think ethic is code, set of rules, and moral is something, is how people behave in a place or at a time, at a point of time. So moral can be different from one place to another. What is moral to me might be immoral to you. What is immoral in a place might be immoral in other place. But when we are talking about ethics, so it is code of conduct or rules we put aside to make something moral or immoral. So these principles are the one to judge on whether something is moral or immoral.
Okay. So, do you read French sources? Okay, in the French philosophy, there are There is differentiation between moral and ethics, etiquette. So, and we have different opinions. For example, Paul Ricoeur, the French philosopher, differentiate between three types of, three levels of ethics: moral, ethics, and the practical wisdom. So, and he gave concept for each one of these levels. But there is no agreement on the differentiation between moral and ethics. You know, I counted like 11 opinions about the differentiation between ethics and moral, and they contradict each other. My opinion that there is no differentiation between moral and ethics. You know, so but we can leave aside the terms. But we can agree on the levels and the concepts, you know. This is what we call, you know, we have applied. So the term applied ethics is an American term to avoid the discussion about moral and ethics. So they coined applied ethics to avoid this discussion, you know? So, and this is now, it's very famous now because it's linked to the professional ethics. What we mean by professional ethics, biology, medical and medical ethics and media ethics and media biology and social, I think. And now it's more extended than before. Now the professional is more extended than before. Now we included in other areas. This is how it started in the 1970s in America, but now it's more wider than before. It's wider than before. So now there is no applied morals, but there's applied ethics, you know, to avoid this discussion. So I think this is problematic to differentiate between the moral and the ethics, you know, because we have different opinions. Yeah. So this is why we have applied ethics, we have theoretical ethics, and we have meta ethics, 3 levels now. So you call whatever you like one of these levels, you know, you can term it as you like. But the content here is now, you know, the marriage with the intention of divorce. Now, if you will ask me about this, what do you think of this? I will differentiate between two cases. Are both know about this intention, or just from one side? The second, both they agreed on this intention. First of all, before I start to answer any, you know, so I need to know about this intention, if it's mutual or just from one side. And so each case will be evaluated differently then, you know. This is as the form, you know. So now, but what about the value here? So we are talking about marriage here. We didn't say non-marital relationship. So you are going to keep the nature or the marital contract. So marital contract is just a procedure. But what about the value behind the marital contract? You know? So, but okay, now with non-marital relationship, it's clear. There is no marriage, you know? It's clear. And usually, it's mutual intention, with mutual intention and you know, agreement. But there is no marriage. There's no the state even, you know, because there is no marriage at all. So the state has nothing to play here. But there's a social dimension here. There's a social dimension. Now, if we say that, okay, you know, non-marital relationship is moral or ethical, it depends, you know, or moral and ethical. So why? The question would be why, you know? So the evidence is that for those who consider this as a moral relationship, they will say that, okay, there is an agreement from both sides. Both of them are adult. Now, if they are not adult, you know, the state will intervene again, and the family, and you know, so we are, you know, going in another different direction. Now, let's say both of them are adult, okay, and there is consent, the mutual agreement, and there is full autonomy for each one of them. So each one of them, as an ethical person, is responsible for his or her autonomous decision. Okay, so in the secular approach or epistemological framework, this is ethical. you know. But now if we will move to a religious one, Islamic one specifically, you know, so there is something missing in this framework, which is God's will as we interpret it, you know. So God's will be followed, or will follow the command and forbid. The command and forbid is written in the scripture, you know. It's clarified. The scripture says, okay, this is immoral. ولا تقربوا الزنا إنه كان فاحشة وساء سبيلا. So the scripture said that this is immoral. So there is حق الله وحق العباد, you know. So we talked about the rights of God and the rights of human beings. In Islamically, this is immoral, non-marital relationship, you know. So immoral because of this and that. Now, secularly, it's moral because what I said already, you know, because the full autonomy is preserved and is the right of the human being as individual. This is the secular. But the Islamic one, human being has not full autonomy to decide, you know. So we are among two different epistemological framework, you know, and each one has its own justifications, and we have to acknowledge this, you know, and to understand it first of all. Now, there is another dimension, in my opinion, here. It will be very controversial anyway, you know. Non-marital relationship, if the neighbor know this, you know, and the friends, and you know, so this will be a different case, Islamically. Now because there is agreement, and people know, you know, it's public, you know. The question will be when it was public, before or after, you know, fiqhiyan. In the Islamic law the question will be before or after, because to label such relationship as a legal or a moral, as moral here, not legal, as moral, it should be complete, you know. The procedure and the value should be completed at the beginning, not later, you know. So, for example, the Maliki school, they didn't ask for witnesses to have a contract, a moral contract and official contract and legal contract in the classical time.
Religiously valid.
Religiously valid, yeah. This is the right expression. So witnesses are not conditions, you know, but being public is a condition. Why being public? To save the consequences of this relationship. If they got a child, or one of them was a bad guy, you know, so at least there are a small community, they know about this relationship, so they can support al-mazlum, you know, the weak part of this relationship, so they can support him. So there is تضامن, mobilization, تضامن, solidarity. So social solidarity in this relationship. Now, if it's just individual, you know, and they are seeking for just fun, this is something different, you know, because, you know, the consequences and the nature of the relationship will be, and the value and the form will be different, you know. So this is just an example. Yeah.
And just have a question to understand. You spoke about God's will, إرادة الله الرب, and the servant's will, إرادة العبد أو الخلق. And my question is, can we say that إرادة الله رب العالمين يعني is always due to the interest of the abd. You understand my question? Because if it is so, I think we have to look at all these topics from an ethical position.
You cannot frame it this way. I mean, iradatullah is not just restricted to the intention of human being.
No, it's not what I mean. I mean that all ahkam who refer in Quran and Sunnah are in the interest of the abd. So Rabb al-Alamin will not do any hukum against the interest of his servants.
Yes, but how do you define the interest? Here is the question.
Yeah.
You know, who defines the interest? So let's say there is an agreement that all Sharia rulings are established for the interest of the human beings.
Yeah.
Okay, this is for sure. But how can we define the interest?
Yeah,
this is the question.
My thought was that you spoke about Shatibi. We can also quote here Juwaini, who have made system concept of maqasid. I don't know whether maqasid is something there is ijma' about it or not. I don't know that. Maybe you can enlighten us. But when we consider the maqasid and that we have protect the now we have karamat al-insan also added to maqasid in the contemporary studies, as I know, and have the nasl and what comes to sharaf al-insan and all these stuffs, dignity. That we have to maybe when it comes to judge about all these versions of marriage or not marriage, that we have to consider the ethical dimension before we are making a law. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For example, we have spoken about the marriage for a specific period with the intention of divorce. I mean, when I look, I come from a European context. In my country, in Austria and Germany, the diversion rate is more than 50% in the community. So, I mean, I don't think that they marry with the intention of divorce, but it's a reality in these countries. And when it comes to look to the statistic, most people who suffer from poverty in Austria and Germany are women who have kids, and the husband has gone away.
What are you going to what are
You know what I
trying to
mean?
say now here? In which case you are talking about?
I'm speaking about marriage with the intention of divorce. I'm speaking about non-marital relationship, and I'm speaking about unofficial marital relationship. My idea or my suggest is that we have to consider the maqasid. With other words, we have to consider the rights.
Which maqsid that you are referring to here in these three cases?
More than one, actually. As I said,
like what?
Karamat al-insan, hifz al-nasl, when it comes to dignity of the person, to save her, her daily life, or when it comes to women, or the life of the kids. I mean that is really a poor reality in European context, that woman is responsible for her kids. Often men,
so then
they reject
this would
that
be
they
immoral because of this consideration.
Yes, they reject that they have a relationship with that woman. They have no proof. They reject that this kid is his kid, and he leaves her alone, and she's now responsible to manage her life with the kid. And I think to make a judgment or to make a law, it's important to consider the ethical dimension, who are rooted in the maqasid, and then we can maybe come to a law whether it's immoral, moral, it's right judged or not right judged.
So we are talking about two levels here. being moral or immoral, and at the individual level, and going up to the legal system, to have a law for everybody within the system. So they can come together, or they can be separated. At the individual level, you know, the individual persons will decide their own way, their interests, or their objectives, or their priorities. But at the level of the state, so they will look at the collective level, and then the consequences and statistics, and and other dimensions.
Yes, but as you mentioned in your first lesson, there in our Islamic thinking, in our Islamic history, there isn't such a strong border between the public and the private sphere. So it interferes actually.
Yes.
So if we have a lot of women in the community who suffer from poverty, it's a state issue. So the government has to deal with that issue, with the kids who don't have a father, don't have someone who is responsible for them. So it interferes very strongly, I think.
Yes, but how can we judge and evaluate, the individual actions and intentions? We don't have an access to the intentions of people. For example, let's discuss this case: marriage with the intention of divorce. So now, Imam Malik ibn Anas, one of the founders of the four schools, he died 179 Hijri, so it means in the 8th century. So he said that, if some, marriage with the intention of divorce is legal, but immoral. He said clearly, it's ليس من مكارم الأخلاق. ليس من مكارم الأخلاق. What's the point here? So Imam Malik made a clear distinction between legal and moral here. Why? Because, to keep the system, to preserve the system and procedure, I cannot say that, okay, I cannot explore the intention of people. This cannot be measured or controlled. And at the end, we have to keep the system, the procedure, as a system. So now, procedurally, I cannot say that this is immoral, because I cannot judge the intentions, But morally, it's immoral because the person himself or herself knows their intentions, So they cannot judge their intention, but I cannot judge. So keeping the system at the same time, trying to reconcile between morality and procedural. So this is why I put here contract versus consent, So the key point here in the first section, consensual relationship, is the contract. And the key point for the second section, non-consensual relationship, is the consent. The key point. Now, how can we approach the first section, consensual relationship, taking into account the contract, and how can we define the contract and the values, the values behind these relationships, which isn't something normal,
Just to understand you, it means that Malik ibn Anas will forbid a marriage with the intention of divorce when this intention is clarified and written in the contract?
He didn't say that it's haram. Okay, but he is athim, So he made a sin because of his intention.
But in that case, his intention is written down in the contract.
No.
This will make the contract invalid.
So, no, the intention is
so when
something...
it's written, it's invalid.
No, intention is something inner. It's not written anywhere. Or it's not orally expressed even. This is what we mean by intention.
But we can agree that when it's written down, so it's invalid.
Written, okay, خلاص, it's part of the procedure and the legal system, خلاص, it's clear. So it's not intention anymore. So intention is something inner and disappeared. inside the person. Okay. Now, how can we judge this? We cannot judge it. If I will follow the intention and raise doubt about each person's intention in a marriage contract, the system will be corrupted. You know? So we have to keep the regulations. You know? The regulations are very important within the state to keep the rights, the legal rights. The legal rights in general, kids, the money and financial issues, because you refer to the poverty and other dimensions. So the function of the state is to keep the rights, the legal rights. So if we don't have papers, official papers and official procedures, we will lose the rights, the legal rights. So here, legal and moral can be divorced, in the procedure, not in the hereafter. Okay? So this is the point here, and then if we will go with the contract, it's essentially here to raise many questions about the nature of the contract and how it can be done or achieved within the state, out of the state, and how publicly, privately. So there are different possibilities and controversial issues about the nature of the contract here. Is it a legal contract or a moral contract? Moral contract, it means that, okay, we have nothing to do with the state or the legal procedure, but, it's an agreement between two autonomous people, and they are responsible for relationship and the consequences of relationship. This is a moral agreement, the moral contract, contractual relationship, because any relationship is a contractual relationship, whether it's legal or moral, or both, So we have to keep in mind these dimensions when we analyze or evaluate such relationship, to take in account all these dimensions.
I have one. Are you finished?
Yes.
I have one question, because if I understood Islamic ethics correctly, there is no real differentiation between law or legal and moral. Like, if we understand Islamic ethic or ethics within Islam, it should be intertwined. So for me, it would be, as my colleague already mentioned, the responsibility of the state to guarantee a certain kind of morality. I mean, be it through education, be it religiously or formal education. So what is your position on that? Like the misuse of religion or the misuse of God's command through social institutions, for example,
yes.
through...
This is a very important point. So now, I support the regulations, I support making regulations to preserve the weakness people, whether who they are, So this is the function of the state, and the lawyer or those who establish laws in the state to save the rights of people, So at the end, the public rights of God. How can we translate rights of God within the state? It's the public interest. And the public interest is should be regulated by the state. So God will not regulate his rights, in the worldly life.
But
we are the one who regulate these rights, the public right. This is why the Hanafi school, for example, said that al-haqq al-am, now we have in the law, we have something called al-haqq al-am, the public right. Mm-hmm. So the public right in the worldly life is the right of God, but right of God is not restricted to the worldly aspect.
But what I mean also, like, how do you guarantee the internalization of these values? For example, yesterday we talked about Iman and Islam, like the connection between internalization of these values transmitted through God and transmitted or reflected upon through your own human capacity, and also the role of the institutions and the misuse and the miseducation, or like the state regulating only the legal aspects but not guaranteeing the moral aspect, or the conscientization or internalization of these values in a collective and not only in an individual.
Okay, this is the dilemma that we are talking about, you know. But I think that we have to work on two levels. I criticize political Islam, what's so-called political Islam, because they are trying to legalize the Sharia in general. So Sharia is not illegal. This is what I've been trying to say here. You know, 1 out of 10 is just illegal in the Sharia, but 9 out of 10 is non-justiciable. Non-justiciable. So we don't have to focus on the legal aspect within the Sharia, which is 1 out of 10. You know, now. What does this mean? This means that we have to work on the moral conscience. So the moral conscience, it should be to cultivate the moral conscience inside Muslims, to strengthen this moral sensitivity to behave in a right way. So I think that the idea is clear. I hope that it's clear. So this is what I meant by, you know. But at the end, we need regulations. We cannot just keep things, you know, in the public and social life just for the individual conscience, because there will be always, forever, you know, bad people, and we have to save rights, you know. But at the same time, we cannot rely only on the legal aspects, because laws doesn't make or produce the right people. It makes them afraid of, you know, but will not produce righteous people. This is the function of religion and religious moralities and social moralities even, you know? Yes.
No, just to comment on the topic of marriage and like legally and morality, because actually when I think like in Belgium, we actually, I don't know if it's always, but certainly cases where people think that there might be like, to say like maybe people just want to marry to get like a visa or something, that like they don't really want to get married. Actually, like they have like a sort of, how would say, like they talk with the people, they take them apart, like they do something to you never know people's intentions, but you can at least try to make sure that, so there are some options. And I think it's like in some cases, I think it's pretty clear when people try to get like a marriage with the intention of divorce. And then I think it's important to at least try to act upon it instead of just assume like, yeah, it's legal, so we cannot know people's intentions. We never know people's intentions, but I think we can at least try to.
Yes, this is a very important point. She's referring to the, you know, how can we translate intentions, human being intentions, into legal system? You know, legal restrictions or instructions, you know. So now, this is very considered within the fiqh itself, you know. So for example, I'll give you an example here. So now, if I was, you know, kidding with my friend, and you know, I punished him, you know, just for kidding, and he died for some reason, you know, for some reason he died. So I will say that, okay, if we will go to the court, you know, for example, he had a heart attack or for some reason, exceptional reason, you know, he died because of this, you know, incident. Now, how can we judge in the court, as a judge, how can I evaluate this situation? Because usually, this action doesn't cause, dying. So as a judge, it's clear that he was not intentionally trying to kill him. He didn't intentionally kill him, So it's by mistake. It's clear. Why? It's not, as a judge, I cannot evaluate his intention. So what I evaluate, the tool that he used. So the tool here is in the position of the intention as a judge, so I can evaluate the tool. For example, if I was kidding with him using the gun, and I said to the judge that I didn't want to kill him, but we were kidding. So his intention nonsense here is nonsense in the court, and it will be considered as intentionally criminal crime. Why? Because I evaluate the tool, the means. So there's always ways to evaluate or control the intentions to come close to. We cannot, at the end, we cannot know for sure the full intention, but at least we can evaluate the tools and means in between, because it can be controlled. These means can be controlled, but intentions cannot be controlled. God only will know, intentions comprehensively. So the state as regulations, this is the function of the state, to regulate relationships between social relationships and to investigate as much as they can, to keep the rights, to preserve the rights of people, So in this case, we can have our investigation, legal investigation, and evidences or instructions, or always there will be, and at the end the conclusion will be the judge's decision.
May I just ask a question
Yes.
here regarding what has been said? But would it be not logically to assume that only the official marital contract is the legitimate one, because it's the only one who can protect the rights of all people, woman, man? I mean, all other versions you have mentioned here, of course, it matters on how we define them, and intention, yes, not, written, yes, not. But I mean, the official marital contract is, in my understanding, the only one who can regulate the maximum at the maximum dimension. And because of this, when we consider that as a measure for judgment, so we have to conclude that official marital contract is the only one who is to be legitimate.
Yes. This is why, for example, in some countries like Egypt or Syria, or, you will be punished if you will make an official contract. Legally, you will be punished if the state discover this. So, but in other countries, it's they have their own regulations. Now, let's. We don't have enough time. Let's go for. I was supposing to discuss another. Just briefly, the differentiation between lying and stealing.
Sorry, Doctor.
Yes.
Mutaz. And just a quick one. With regards to the last slide. So in terms of surrogacy cases, how would you justify those cases? Would they fall under consensual relationship or non-consensual relationship? Because there's still a contract and agreement between two parties of procreation, but that is, it doesn't consider as marriage, but still there is an agreement. So where would that fall?
The last one, you mean? Within marriage?
No, the surrogacy, yes.
Yeah, within marriage. So this is the new controversial issue, you know, especially in France and some other European countries, you know, they consider if there is no consensus, there is no consent within the marriage relationship, so this will be considered as rape, you know. So this is a controversial issue. So the legal discussion and moral discussion could be in different way, you know. So legally, if I am a lawyer, you know, I will say that, okay, this is an official contract, right? And the contract give the right for each person, you know, to have this relationship, you know, anytime they would like. So there is no need for a new agreement each time to have consent, you know, if I am a lawyer. So I will say this, you know, this is a valid argument, you know, but the other argument, you know, which is enforced by the contemporary discussions about the autonomy, you know, the full autonomy for each person, especially for the women, you know. So they will say no, if she didn't like, you know, she doesn't want now, okay, so this is immoral and illegal at the same time if she went to the court and complained, you know. So this is another. So now we are among two different arguments. This is the point, which is very controversial. I'm not going to, and this is why there is a prophetic report, you know, talking about this issue, you know, but is not talking directly about, you know, the consent or having consent or not having consent, but it's talking about, you know, if the husband asked the wife to have a relationship and she refused, okay, so she will commit a sin. Now this prophetic report is questioned within the context, the modern discussions about this issue, you know, if it's true, authentic or unauthentic, you know, and how can we interpret this, you know. This is based on the modern discussions about this issue, you know. I will give more details. I will. I don't have enough time. I need to go to.
No, thanks for your answer, but in my opinion, that case actually lies on the borderline of consensual and non-consensual, especially in a case where a woman is non-Muslim. And then she doesn't have any awareness of the Islamic contract, on the other hand, if a woman is Muslim who has a knowledge of Muslim contract but with the intention of divorce, that's something. It's unjustifiable to say that it will lie under non-consensual because it's still outside marriage, but in a way it's marriage with the intention of divorce because the woman is just purely there to carry the child and not staying in the contract with the intention of long-term longevity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the last point here, I was planning to, you know, lying and stealing. For example, lying cannot be, it's non-justiciable, but stealing is justiciable, you know. But if lying in front of in the court, this is justiciable, you know. So we have different levels at in the same issue, but within the court and out of the court. But stealing, it's justiciable. But it's non-justiciable if he didn't complain and go to the police or, you know. So you can do this. You always have this option, you know. And ruling versus value even, you know, when we talk about the punishment of adultery, you know, and qadf. So there's a huge discussion here about, you know, the value and the ruling, you know, because who commit adultery and in publicly, he is the only one will be punished, because we condition here four witnesses that they saw him doing this, you know. So this means that he's doing this publicly. So the value here is protection of the public morality, not committing adultery, you know. So the form and the value here. This is just briefly. Now let's go to the text that you have. We have two texts here. One from Ibn Rushd. Ibn Rushd is the Maliki and jurist and philosopher. He died 595 Hijri. And the other one is from al-Shatibi, Al-Imam Abu Ishaq al-Shatibi, the Maliki jurist. And he died 790 Hijri. So the first one, I mean the book of Aqdiya, the one page. This is the first one. This is from the book entitled Bidayatul Mujtahid. Bidayatul Mujtahid, the one page only, the one page. So this is written by Ibn Rushd al-Hafid. He died 595. So he ended his book talking about, this is the last pages, 2 pages in his book. This is the conclusion. This is the conclusion. You can have just a few minutes, like 3 minutes to read it from page 571, the last paragraph. The last paragraph. And then the last page. 571, you can start from the last paragraph. Just silently, you can read, you have 3 minutes to read the one page. Yes?
So from what I gather, moral casuistry is to sort of gather all the facts about a situation and then try to determine if an act is ethical or not, or moral or not, just to sort of avoid that discussion. But what happens in the event where there's competing moral principles? Like in the case of lying or stealing, it's probably legally not acceptable or justifiable. But it could be to the save, you know, for example, the lives of your children who are starving. So it's morally acceptable, but legally unacceptable. So normally, what tends to happen when you have competing principles from an Islamic perspective, if you're using moral casuistry?
Can you give me a case, for example?
I suppose in Islam, is there a hierarchy of values, principles that stand?
Yes. For example, if I, you know, if I know that you are not a bad person, and then for some reason the police is looking after you, and then they ask me if I saw you or not, you know, I can say no, you know, to preserve you. So here, and this is a morally accepted but illegal, you know, because I lied, but morally accepted. Now, but doing your moral duty is something, is including that being able to be punished legally, you know, because you lied. This is part of your moral duty, because I lied to preserve or to support the right position. So I will be willing to be punished legally if I am committed to my moral duty. This is part of the moral duty, you know.
So Islamically,
it can happen. It can happen.
Islamically, do you incur a punishment? Say, for example, I steal, but the intention was to feed my family.
Now we are talking about the state, you know, not Islamically or non-Islamically. You know, the state. Okay, so in the worldly procedure, the state has the right to punish you, you know, because they're looking for preserving the procedure. They don't care about, you know, this is the dichotomy, the divorce between the procedure and the value, you know. Sometimes, you know, some Muslimin, unjust, oppressed people can be put in the prison, but they are. It's unjust, But for some reason, they were in the prison. They ended up within the prison, So the procedure not always preserve or achieve values. This is the point. Yeah. But if I believe that you didn't commit a crime, and I can support you, I have to support you against the legal procedure, Or at least, I always can find a way to support you, without transgression the legal system, So I'm not going against the legal and the laws, but I can try to help you as much as I can within the procedure. It depends. I cannot push all people to do this, So it's based on the capability and the potentiality of, You can know something about this person I cannot know, so I cannot support him. But So there are different elements play a role within this complicated situation or case. This is the point.
But as a Muslim, do I incur punishment to, for example, if I were breaking a law, a societal law, and it's not really only societal, but religion?
This is a worldly punishment. It's the state's laws, So it depends on the procedure, again. But this doesn't necessitate the hereafter punishment, This is just worldly punishment. So it's based on the regulations that we made as a human being. It's not religious. So this can happen. For example, let's assume that the state of Qatar established a law saying that, polygamy is prohibited. This is the opposite now. Polygamy is prohibited. This is illegal legal regulations. If I married more than one, religiously and morally, Islamically, I'm immoral, But legally, I can be punished by Qatar, because I transgressed the law set by the state. So there's always no, link. It can be separated and can come together, reconciled together between law and religion or ethical or moral, This is the point. Yeah.
Sorry, I know that I'm pushing a point, but I believe that I think we're all here for a reason, and basically ethics is not merely an intellectual pursuit. It is actually for our own personal development, and I'd like to think everyone in this room is probably here also for that reason to some extent. So to sort of step away from what the state expects of us or what the man-made law they sort of decide to impose upon us at that point in time, if we were to move back from that and say morality, the objective of that is to strengthen our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is an elevation from one state to another. And I think that's why Reinhardt makes a distinction between, the wajib and the fard and the makruh tanzihi and so on and so forth. The whole point is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes? And I think if we were to take the state out of it altogether, we approach fiqh in such a way as to help us outwardly practice our religion, so we know what we ought to do in a particular situation procedurally according to Islam. But morally speaking, at times there are conflicts. So Islamically, we can't steal, because that's a protection of property of others. But if I do not steal and I cannot feed my kids, I have not protected their lives or been a means towards protecting their lives. So we have those competing priorities. So if I were to choose one over the other, knowing that from the fiqh perspective, yes, I have sinned. From a moral perspective, maybe not so much. Islamically, what takes higher precedence? That was my question.
Yes.
I don't think that.
For example, now the example that you gave now, okay, if you steal to feed up your kids, and yourself even, not your kids, to feed up yourself, it's morally to steal and legally to steal, Islamically. But is this the case within the state? This is something different, you know?
Yeah, I'm not discussing that point.
Okay, so this is legally and morally to steal, and you have to do.
So it becomes an obligation then?
Yes, to preserve your life. If you are going to, you know?
Steal, an obligation
Yeah,
to
I
steal.
understand. I understand. To take whatever means possible to
So,
alleviate
yes,
the necessity.
okay. So it's an obligation to preserve your life. But now, in this case, in this context, the only means to feed up or to preserve my life is to steal it. So I have to steal. But this context or this casuistry will never change the value itself of not stealing or stealing. This is bad as a value, you know. But this is an exceptional case in this context for this person within this complicated situation,
So
because we
Islam-
hired,
Yeah.
you know, we followed the hierarchy of the values,
Yeah.
you know. Now, preserving life is a value, and not stealing is a value. But which one can we rank higher than other? This is the question here. You know, another example. You know, if somebody enforced somebody, you know, and to have a sexual relationship, you know, unless if she didn't agree, he will kill her. What can we do here? You know, contradiction or contradiction case. So there are two values here: to preserve her life and to preserve her self. You know, her honor, her, you know, her right or her autonomy, you know. So there are two values here. There's a huge discussion within Islamic fiqh, Islamic law, about this case. What can we do? And which one comes first? Can she allow him to do this or not? You know, this is another case. So yeah, the point here is, as you see here, the scholar in the 6th Hijri century is trying to link between al-sunan, al-ahkam, the rulings, and the virtues. So he's proving in his conclusion of a book, he's demonstrating the link between rulings and virtues. So that in two ways, or in two levels, that the rulings should lead to the virtues, and at the same time, the objective of establishing these rulings is to achieve virtues. You know, so virtues is the fruit of rulings, and at the same time, you know, the objective of establishing these rulings is to achieve virtues. So it's a double movement. You know, the rulings lead to, and the objective of establishing rulings to perform these rulings is to achieve virtues at the same time. You know. So this is a very essential, this is a very important contribution to link or to demonstrate that there is a link between fiqh and ethics within the classical works. You know, and if you analyze this text, you find him talking about different values. For example, he started talking about the justiciable and non-justiciable. If you realize this, you know, and then he talked about, you know, justiciable. As I said, it's something obliged, but non-justiciable is something related to being obligated, iltizam. So, and he talked about different values. He talked about generosity, karama. He talked about temperance, iffa. He talked about justice. He talked about preserving honor and sharaf. So he talked about ethical values, about justice, about individual integrity. He talked about generosity, social life, charity. He talked about evil intent. He talked about other values. Okay, so, and then he ended up talking about 4 key values that are considered even: temperance, justice, courage, generosity. And at the end, it's very important. The last sentence is very important. He said that العبادات كالشروط في تثبيت الفضائل. You know? So he said that worship, ibadat, are like conditions for the fulfillment of these virtues, merits, virtues. So he's making a very strong link between rulings and virtues. And worshipping God is the means to achieve virtues, is a condition to achieve virtues. So you cannot achieve virtues without worshipping God. Why? Because as I said before, you know, the Muslim theologians discussed what is the first moral obligatory that every human being should start with. So rationally, before the revelation, before scripture. So they ended up, they concluded with that the first moral obligatory is thanks God. You know, shukr al-mun'im. Why? Because I explained to you before, you know, because he is God. I mean, subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator. Because he is the creator and existence is a value itself, so we have to start with this. And all other values will be a consequence of this first value. You know? So now, if we discuss, you know, what do you think, you know, which one is more valuable than other, you know, or being existent or not being existent? You know, not being existent is something Adam, you know. Adam, there is no value for Adam, for not being existent. But all the values are based on being existent, you know. So this is the first moral obligatory that you have to, even rationally, even if there is no prophets, no religions, no scripture, you have to achieve this value and to be gratitude to the one who created you, you know. This is just briefly. Now let's go to another, the other text. The other text is from al-Shatibi, al-Muwafaqat, the book entitled al-Muwafaqat by al-Shatibi. This is a very now because it's the first independent book on maqasid al-Sharia, the higher objectives of Sharia. This is the first independent book. So in this chapter, al-Shatibi is talking about. Okay, can you read the highlighted paragraphs? Just the highlighted paragraphs. Okay, are you done? So what's the key point here in his argument? Mm-hmm. And the key issue here that is the first principle that he set up here. The first issue, goal of the Sharia is to bring the subject out of the compulsions of his desire. So all the rulings, Sharia rulings, are set to preserve or to control human being from following his desires. So this is the first issue. So because he said that, this is a very important point. This is the objective of the Sharia, he said. So to preserve a human being from following his personal desires. Now, this is a very moral objective. Because as I told you before, so how should they act and how should they live? So both of them are falling under this objective, right? So now, and the other point that to prevent him, this is in page 136, he said that in the last paragraph, he said that, third comes the knowledge through experience and practices that convey the meaning that the interests of this world and the next cannot be secured through an uncontrolled pursuit of desire and by walking alongside personal fantasies, because they necessarily lead to injury, mutual conflict, and destruction, which run counter to these interests. So, ترك الاسترسال الطبيعي, he said in his original text. ترك الاسترسال الطبيعي. So, the human being should not follow his natural desires. So, should control the desires. And the second point that he linked between the Sharia rulings and the virtues again. So he interpreted the virtues within the five categories. To demonstrate that human being should leave aside his personal desires and follow the divine will, and at the same time his desire, he should cultivate himself to make his desires follow the divine will. So you love what God loves, and you hate what God hates. This is the very Sufi concept, and this is written in a Fiqh source, not in the Sufi source, and this was in the 8th Hijri century. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I think we went out of time.